talk about the vagueness argument. And I come from the point of view of universalism, but I'm going to focus mainly on a debunking argument to point out where orthodox comes from, because I know in class a lot of the philosophers were like, there is a debunking argument, I'm not going to make it, but there is one. So I'm going to try and explain that to you guys in terms of evolution, because that's what they know about. And then I'll give a couple reasons at the end why I think once the orthodox isn't very well trusted, we should pick universalism over nihilism, although it's not totally decided. So as far as the vagueness argument goes, you have Lewis and Sider, and Lewis, he says it's based on intuition. Where do we have the idea that some wholes exist and not others? Well, we just got that from our thoughts that we already had beforehand. And he says that intuition is basically vague. We change our intuitions all the time. People's intuitions disagree. They come from somewhere. It's not really like, this is not a hard rule, and he just thinks that this shouldn't be applied to metaphysics. And then you have Sider, and he kind of points out where the vagueness is by saying, oh, you have a series, and the series is so fine-grained. The units of time in the world are so incredibly fine-grained. And you will have to pick out one single time point where a whole is composed on one side, and on the other side, a whole isn't composed. How do you pick that? This seems completely overwhelming. You would have to have such a perfect, nuanced rule to do that. And usually, we don't have that. I mean, you could make one up, but then, you see, doing this is unintuitive. But the whole point of having a moderate answer is to fit our intuitions. It's almost like a trap. Oh, I want mereology to align with my prior ideas. Okay, let me just make up a rule. Okay, now I have to apply the rule in so many situations that eventually one of these situations is not going to line up with what I ordinarily think. But vagueness, it just points out for us that our intuitions are probably not very trustworthy. But it's hard to say that they're trustworthy or not if we don't know where they come from. So a debunking argument's job is to tell you where the orthodox views and where our intuitions about mereology come from. And usually this is implied to say, like, if we can explain our orthodox using things that aren't the real existence of metaphysical wholes, then it shouldn't even be in the conversation, because it's not going to tell us about what's real. It's just going to tell us about who we are and what we think, which is usually not the goal. So I'll just continue to explain the debunking argument that I have. But first, does anyone have any questions about vagueness? All good? Yeah?
Can you just explain again what the vagueness argument is?
Yeah, so vagueness, it basically says that intermediate arguments have to have rules. And those rules have to be applied to every single tiny situation. And eventually, you're going to have two situations where you think they must be the same. But you're going to have to pick between one of them is a whole and one of them isn't. Imagine like a bunch of particles, and they're coming together, and they're coming together, and they're coming together over time. And if you divide that up into enough time slots, you're going to have to pick where does the whole begin, and then you pick something, and then you look at the two sides, and they look identical, and you're like, this is unintuitive. But that kind of defeats the whole point, because you're in the moderate answer spot for intuitiveness. So yeah. Okay, guys. I'm gonna have to explain biology and evolution to you now. So we know that we humans have ideas about what holes there are. Okay. What are humans? Humans are living things. Where did living things come from? A series of ancestors that developed over time under changing environmental conditions. And the ancestors changed and changed and changed, and we have all these intermediate forms that lived in different environments in different time periods. And at some point, we were just one little single-celled ancestor. And eventually we got here. But at what point along the way did we develop ideas about composite wholes? At no point. We always had ideas about composite wholes. Because where do we get composite wholes? From our senses. We sense things. I sense this chair. I look at it and I touch it. And I'm like, yeah, that seems whole. Okay. I like, whenever I drag it around, I feel it moving all at the same time. And somehow, history has led me to believe that means it's one thing. So I'm going to use something that's more simple and more like a very ancient ancestor. Bacteria. And E. coli bacteria. E. coli bacteria is also a living thing. Okay, how does it live? It needs energy. You need energy to continue through time. How does it get energy? By recognizing sources of energy. Here is a receptor. We all have receptors. Every living organism has receptors. We all have sensing abilities because of receptors. Some people will say, plants don't sense things. They do. They sense light and gravity and little minerals in the soil and water. Every single living thing senses stuff. What do these sensors sense? Molecules. Not quarks, not atoms, not particles, not simples. They sense molecules because molecules are sources of energy. If you're wondering why aren't particles a source of energy, that's rather because, for one, living organisms are quite big. We're made of so many particles that, taking in a couple particles at a time, that's not really going to do anything. We could think of, oh, maybe I want to sense these quarks. This is kind of useless. This is inefficient. If they're not working together, they don't do anything for us. If they work together, they develop something called an emergent property. An emergent property is a property held by a collection of simples that is not held by the individuals. So you can think of this in something very simple, like mass. Simples all have very, very tiny masses, but if you look at the collection of them, all of a sudden they have a different mass, a bigger mass. You wonder, like, do maybe all of these particles have a big mass? No. Mass is additive, and that's what emergent properties are. They're additive. One of the emergent properties that something can have is a relationship. It can cause bigger things because it works together. And bigger collections like this can cause energy accumulation in living beings. That is one of the emergent properties that something can have. Just that ability. I mean, you can sit here and think of so many emergent properties. I have a list, you know. Like even what we think of as our normal human, everyday relationships to things like, oh, I am friends with someone. Being friends is an emergent property because not every single one of my symbols is a friend to this person. That does not make sense. If I took off one of my molecules, it is not a friend to another person. My whole being is a friend because all of my particles work together. That is similar to the way that bacteria are sensing molecules. This whole thing will provide me energy. Not the particles. One particle will not provide me energy. Any of these parts on their own, I mean, we know this is made of symbols. None of the symbols that make this up on its own are going to provide me with energy. I need the whole thing. So I need to detect the whole thing. Because if I'm just detecting some symbols, well, it could be the same symbols as are shared by a different molecule that I don't want, because that doesn't give me energy. So I detect this. And it gives me energy and it helps me live. What happens when things help me live? Features of myself. This receptor here helps me live because it helps me detect this as one whole thing. Because it obviously is heritable, this receptor is coded by some DNA. It's going to be passed on to, at least some of my children. At least some of them will have a receptor. And those ones will be more successful because they can detect different energy sources. The more energy sources, the better, honestly. I mean, recognizing them is just one part of it. You also have to be able to, eat them and things like that, but those are different systems. So over time, you're going to see organisms surviving longer if they have the ability to sense all of what I call energy effectors. So energy effectors are things like this molecule. This affects his energy. So it needs to detect it. So it can either, maybe it's a negative energy effector, and so this thing is dangerous to its energy, it's going to kill it. You would want to sense that too, because then you can send a response and wipe this out. Or if it's a positive energy effector, you would want to sense it so you can eat it. Okay, this is going to affect your survival. It's an energy effector. Sensing energy effectors is very good. We want to do that. So we develop things like eyes and ears and tongue and little skin cells that sense pressure. All of these complex sensory systems. He's got ears, he's got eyes, he's got a tongue, oh, he's got a nose. This is very complex. He senses so many things. We sense so many things. I've got so many things in my sense right now. So he kind of needs a big brain to compensate, right? He needs to know. He needs to not only accept all of these senses, but then figure out what to do about them. And that's part of where humans, come in. Because humans, yeah, we sense things, but we also interpret what we've sensed in our brain. We think about it. And we also communicate what we've sensed to other people because we're in relationships with other people. Other people are human energy effectors. Other people, you guys, you all affect my energy, and I affect yours. We kind of affect our ability to survive. He's going to give me a grade in this class, and my grade in this class is going to affect my ability to get a degree, and my ability to get a degree is going to affect my ability to get a job, and my ability to get a job is going to affect how long I live, right? And human relationships are very complicated, as that example just pointed out. But, that's just the nature of humans. We sense so many things. We have so many relationships. We need to interpret so much, okay? We're very complex. And that's why we have a lot of ideas about what holes there are. I don't know if you've ever looked at an encyclopedia, but it's very long. Very, very long. People will list holes for days and hours and years, and sometimes we'll even discover new ones. And be like, wow, I sensed this thing yesterday and it affected my energy using an emergent property. I needed a name to call this. And all of a sudden, it's like a new species of plant that poisons you or something. And we just keep adding those over and over again. And that's the thing about humans is we don't really have to wait for a DNA mutation to sense something new. We can kind of do it with all of this excess input that we're receiving. We are not limited as much by our sensing as we are our interpreting. Our interpreting is there to tell us which things we sense affect our energy. Is this food? Is this danger? Is this someone to interact with? What should I do about this sensual experience I'm having? That's what the brain does. And that's very useful for survival. We kind of need that. And then you add another layer, and it's like, oh, I have to make a word for this. I have to make a word for this experience, and I need to use this word to tell other people about this experience. Now, why would that be beneficial to my survival? Well, I can tell my friends, hey, this thing is good, you should go get it. And I can tell my enemies, this thing is good and you should go get it and be lying. Or, I can warn someone about the danger of falling out of a tree. A tree is a hole that I have given a name to because I sensed it that way. And I'll say, hey, don't go near that tree. It's pretty dangerous. Don't climb on that thing. All of these, very complex things. But I find it really helps to just think about simple little bacteria. He senses this molecule and nothing else. Maybe 2 other things. So to him, if he has 3 kinds of receptors, there are only 3 holes in the world. He only knows 3 holes. Everything else is just some random, whoa, he doesn't even know it's there. But to us, even though we have more senses, and we have a million plus ideas of what holes there are still some things that we're like, no, I didn't sense that. I didn't sense any effect on me. Things like trogs. Okay, trog? What the heck is this? What do you mean? Tree and dog. There is no reason to be talking about tree and dog as a whole. I have detected no effect on my energy from this thing. I have not sensed an emergent property composing with the 2 of them. There are maybe, some extra emergent properties held by dog and tree together, but none of them affect me as far as I can sense. You might say they do affect you, but you're just not able to sense it. So that's why you don't know about frogs. But no humans really, really sense this. When I see a dog and a tree next to each other, I don't say, oh, something's going to happen to me because this is here. No, it's not. Okay? But I do recognize dog, and I'm like, yeah, the emergent properties of dogs. It can eat my scraps. It can be warmth, it can be soft. Emergent properties of trees. It can be shelter. It can turn into, some wood for a house. It can do all these things and have all these relations with me. Trog cannot have relations with me as far as I'm aware, or as far as the entirety history of humanity is aware. If for some reason tomorrow we wake up and we find out that trogs have amazing mental effects and boost the happiness of humans by 100%, which is higher than a dog or a tree alone or combined, then we would say, okay, trogs exist and we're really good. But that hasn't happened. All right, guys. Questions about the evolution of how we came to sense holes? No? No? Yeah?
I think I'm a little bit confused by the energy effector portion.
Yeah, so by energy effector, I'm directly talking about like it affecting your ability to survive and like persist over time. Because surviving is not just an in the moment, it's like you have to push through time, you have to continue your life. And
Cool.
so like energy allows you to maintain order, right? Low entropy, okay?
I guess for me, it's more like let's take the brick in the wall. I feel like there's definitely objects that like we traditionally think of as objects that don't necessarily have that sort of involvement with energy. Like, what are your thoughts
Name
on
an
that?
example.
I'll take like the Great Wall of China. Like,
That is a big energy effector. The Great Wall of China?
but how so?
Imagine you're invading China and you see this huge wall. You're like, oh man, I can't even get in there. My tribe's gonna get stomped by China because their wall is crazy good. Like, I feel like when you go up to the Great Wall of China, even now, like let's say you're not having a war with China, you go up to the Great Wall of China and you're like, this thing, wow, this causes me to need special access into China, like I have to get through this thing. I could walk around on top of this thing and go, wow, this is such impressive architecture. Like,
Would it be like kind of almost capability for humans to be affected by it then?
well, there's kind of two components. There's one, is it affecting humans? Is it affecting their survival? And can the human detect that it's affecting their survival? So like, is it affecting our survival is just kind of independent fact of the world. Is square affecting me? Maybe, let's say it is. But let's say I can't see square, I can't smell square, I can't hear square, I can't sense square. So I'm not going to say square as a whole. I'm not going to know it's real, even if it is. Yeah?
What about suppose like a distant star? Is that affecting me?
Mercury,
Well,
one of Jupiter's moons, or some distant star.
the urge for humans to recognize different stars comes from astronomy. And the point of astronomy is for people to like recognize things outside of Earth. And you might think, well, things outside of Earth kind of don't affect us. I mean, sometimes there's a meteor. You know, we've got the moon, we've got our solar system, but outside of our solar system, who cares? Okay? I'll tell you why astronomers care. They care because they think that one day we can go there. That's usually like, oh, let's go to the moon, guys. Let's go to Mars. We want to like have an alternative. What if the sun explodes? We need somewhere to go. You know, a huge part of astronomy is like, let's look for habitable planets. Let's look for other life. Because what does that say about us? Is the other life going to come and kill us? We should know.
So maybe like in the time of Galileo, you know, that's not affecting someone, the average person's energy though.
I mean, there's also long-term thinking in humans. We're very long-term planners, and some of us are like, I think it's going to affect me in the future. I should prepare for this. Because, you know, we're kind of recognizing our future selves as also ourselves. So we're just like preemptively guessing, I think this is going to affect me. I think this will affect me in the future. Is kind of similar to, I think this is affecting me in the present too. Because I'm just assuming that the chair is having like some impact on me. You know, like I think I can sit in this, and I think that matters because sitting requires less energy than standing and all these things. And there's definitely an argument to be made that humans recognize a lot of things. And sometimes we're just like, wait, that's not even real. You know, why are we recognizing this? Who cares about this? And I think a lot of humans like disagree with each other on that. It's kind of just an interpretation thing. Yeah.
Did you say in response to the question about distant stars, in addition or instead, that, when we look through a telescope and we see whether it's a distant star or a distant planet, we see a pattern of a circular shape of clustered matter, and although it wasn't useful for our ancestors to detect distant planets, it was useful for them to detect clustered spheres of matter. And so the tendency to look through the telescope and be like, there's a hole, is a kind of byproduct of the earlier evolutionary tendency to care about, I don't know, pieces of fruit that are circular, right? That are like more direct energy, what is the word you use?
Energy effectors.
Energy effectors.
Um,
Yeah, like evolution would have it's better to give us a tendency to see energy detectors everywhere, rather than miss them.
Yeah, a false positive versus a false
Yeah.
negative. A false negative is probably a lot more harmful than a false positive.
Right.
A false negative being, I think something's there that isn't. Like, hallucinating.
Yeah.
Usually that's pretty bad. I'm going to be running away from something that isn't, real, or I'm going to be, trying to get something that isn't going to do anything for me, maybe. Whereas a false positive, it would be like thinking something is not there. I might be getting this reversed, by the way. But the point is that thinking something's not there, both of them have their risks, I guess. But let's say square is affecting him and he thinks square isn't there. Well, because he thinks square isn't there, he can't react to it. He's not going to mount any response against square. But let's say square is just something he thinks is affecting him. Okay, but it's not actually. This is fake. He just made this up. Well, he's probably going to try and do something about it. He's going to be like, oh, I need to appease square. I need to fight back against square. This is a waste of energy. You shouldn't be doing this. There's both errors are kind of detrimental. But as far as the shape thing you mentioned, maybe we recognize things that are circle more often. Well, there's shapes like that. I feel like we are more likely to recognize unified, simple shapes as wholes because it seems like they come from the same source. So like a fruit, for example, it comes from one seed and it grows out in all directions at equal speeds. And that's why it's a circle later. Rocks don't do this, for example. Rocks are just like, oh, I'm a rock, and sometimes the wind and the water hits me and I get all wavy. Well, we kind of have trouble recognizing individual rocks unless they're literally separated. So we kind of ignore whatever these unordered shapes are. We love to recognize ordered shapes, though, because ordered shapes usually, maybe they indicate life, Yeah. Any more questions on energy effectors? Why they're useful? We can be wrong about them. That's a big thing to point out. We can be wrong about these. Okay, this is maybe one reason to reject the orthodoxes because, yeah, we're kind of wrong about what actually affects us sometimes. And also maybe sometimes metaphysicians are like, I'm talking about metaphysical wholes, but they're actually just trying to talk about human energy effector wholes. And I'll transition into what do we do after all this? What do we do with metaphysics after this created us? Well,